September 26, 1983. 12:15 a.m., 80 miles south of Moscow. Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov was not supposed to be there. He had been called in at the last minute to replace a sick officer. A routine substitution. At exactly 12:15 a.m., the bunker's alarm system screamed to life. On the main screen, a single word began flashing in red. Launch. The most powerful computer in the Soviet Union was telling Petrov that an American nuclear missile was heading toward Soviet soil. He had less than 15 minutes to decide whether to believe it. What he did next kept you alive to hear this story. To understand what Stanislav Petrov faced that night, you have to understand 1983. The Cold War had entered its most dangerous phase. Not since Cuba in 1962 had the two superpowers been closer to nuclear war. That year, NATO had deployed Pershing II missiles in Western Europe. Fast, accurate, mobile, capable of striking Soviet command centers in less than 10 minutes. 10 minutes. The Kremlin's entire early warning window, gone. Soviet General Secretary Yuri Andropov met privately with a West German politician in August 1983. His warning was recorded verbatim. At the button that activates the nuclear weapon could be a drunken American sergeant or a drug addict. General Secretary Yuri Andropov, August 1983. 1 month later, on September 1st, a Soviet Su-15 shot down Korean Airlines Flight 007. 269 civilians. Dead. Reagan called it a crime against humanity. Called the Soviet Union an evil empire. In Moscow, military planners concluded that the American president was genuinely capable of ordering a nuclear first strike. Since 1981, the Soviet military had been running Operation Ryan, the most extensive peacetime intelligence operation in KGB history. Its single objective: detect the first signs that America was preparing to launch. By September 26, 1983, the margin for error had narrowed to almost zero. And in 11 days, NATO would begin its largest military exercise of the Cold War. Able Archer 83. An exercise the Soviets were convinced was cover for a real attack. Into this tinderbox walked Stanislav Petrov, with a phone in one hand and the fate of the world in the other. Serpukhov 15 sat beneath the pine forests 80 miles south of Moscow. Gray concrete buildings, radar domes, a restricted military township that did not appear on any civilian map. Deep underground, the command center of the OKO early warning satellite system. A constellation of satellites in high elliptical orbit, monitoring American missile fields from 40,000 kilometers above the Earth. Their sensors were designed to detect the infrared heat signature of a Minuteman ICBM the moment it left the ground. The brain of the system was the M10 supercomputer, the most powerful computer in the Soviet Union. Before any launch signal could be displayed as confirmed, the data had to pass through 30 separate verification layers. 30 gates designed to eliminate solar glare, atmospheric interference, sensor noise. Petrov knew every one of those gates. He had helped write the code. That was why he was not supposed to be the duty officer. He was an engineer, a systems analyst, not a career soldier trained to execute orders without question. The officer who should have been sitting in that chair that night was home sick. And that accident of scheduling would save the world. If this story is landing the way I think it is, subscribe to the channel. Like the video. Stay with us, because at exactly 12:15 a.m., everything changed. and the next 5 minutes were the most dangerous in human history. 12:15 a.m. The mechanical siren split the silence of the bunker. On the main screen, the map of the northern hemisphere lit up, a bright point of light at an American missile base in Montana. Launch. Petrov grabbed the direct line to his military superiors with his right hand, the intercom to his technicians with his left. The siren screamed again. A second missile, a third, a fourth, a fifth. The screen switched automatically to its highest alert status. The M10 registered 100% confidence. The Crocus communication system had already sent the alert directly to the general staff in Moscow. Officers in the bunker were screaming. Petrov sat still. He had less than 15 minutes before the missiles would cross the physical horizon and appear on ground radar. Less than 15 minutes before the general staff would expect a confirmed report. He began thinking like an engineer. First thought, 5 missiles. If the United States was launching a nuclear first strike to destroy the Soviet Union, it would not send 5 missiles. It would send hundreds, simultaneously, to destroy every Soviet silo before a single warhead could leave the ground. 5 missiles made no military sense. Second thought, the ground radar. The Dnieper radar network around the Soviet periphery showed nothing. No physical objects crossing the horizon. Blank screens. Third thought, the verification process. All 5 alerts had passed through 30 verification layers almost instantaneously. A real missile launch would produce slight variations in signal timing as the algorithms processed the data. This looked like a software loop. Fourth thought, the OCO system was brand new. Rushed into service. 12 satellites had already failed in the preceding year. He had never trusted it fully. Petrov picked up the direct line to the general staff. He took a breath and reported the alert as a computer malfunction. He later described those minutes. I had a phone in one hand and an intercom in the other, and I did not have a third hand to write with. Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov. For the next 15 minutes, Petrov waited. If he was wrong, nuclear warheads would begin detonating on Soviet soil within seconds. The ground radar screens stayed blank. Nothing came. The M10 had misidentified the sun's reflection off high-altitude ice clouds over North Dakota. A rare alignment of orbital geometry, atmospheric conditions, and software error. A combination that had never been programmed into the verification algorithms. The world had come within one man's judgment of nuclear war. The Soviet military launched an immediate investigation. Colonel General Yuri Votintsev, commander of Soviet missile defense, initially praised Petrov personally, promised him a formal military reward. Then the bureaucracy intervened. Rewarding Petrov meant admitting publicly that the OCO early warning system was fundamentally flawed, that billions of rubles had been spent on a system that almost triggered a nuclear war because of sunlight on clouds. The Soviet military could not allow that. Instead of a reward, Petrov received a reprimand. The official reason, improper filing of paperwork. He had failed to record the details of the alarm in the station's war diary during the crisis. He was quietly reassigned to an administrative post. His career was finished. The incident was classified as a state secret. The world would not know for 15 years. Petrov retired in 1984, moved to a small apartment in the town of Fryazino, lived on a pension of $200 a month. His wife was dying of cancer. He suffered a nervous breakdown. The man who had saved the world spent the next 15 years in near total obscurity. In 1998, a retired Soviet general published his memoirs. For the first time, the world learned what had happened in that bunker on September 26, 1983. Petrov became an international figure overnight. He received the German Media Award in 2011, the Dresden Peace Prize in 2013. A documentary was made about his life. He accepted the recognition quietly. He did not consider himself a hero. The guys in the army that just have guns in their hands don't think. They accept orders. My weapon was my brain, and that's the big difference. Stanislav Petrov. He died on May 19, 2017, 77 years old, in the same small apartment in Fryazino. The Soviet Union built the most complex early warning system in history. 30 verification layers, the most powerful computer in the country, satellites watching American missile fields around the clock. And when it mattered most, on the most dangerous night of the Cold War, the system failed. What saved the world was not a satellite, not a computer, not a protocol. It was one man who thought like an engineer instead of a soldier. The Soviet military punished him for it. The rest of us owe him everything. If this story stayed with you, subscribe to Cold War Confidential. Every week, the stories they almost kept classified, one secret at a time. Leave a like if this earned it. These stories deserve to be remembered.